The moment you arrived here, something changed. Not on the screen. In the field around you. It's subtle, like the instant before a storm touches the ground, but once you sense it, you can't unfeel it. The air thickens. Your body knows before your mind admits it. Reality has tilted a few degrees, and you're standing at the edge of something vast. Most people miss it. They scroll past, blink too fast, talk too loud. But you felt it. That faint vibration beneath the ordinary. That quiet invitation that doesn't come twice. What you've just touched is not coincidence, it's alignment. A door that appears only when your inner frequency matches a deeper signal. You didn't find this message by chance. It found you the moment you were ready to notice. The universe doesn't send notifications, it rearranges the silence. Every sensation that brought you here, the restlessness, the timing, the pull you can't explain, was choreography. And right now, you're standing inside that choreography, breath first, thought second. There's a danger in this awareness. Because once you feel the pattern, you realize how much of life you've been living asleep. The smallest decision begins to ripple outward. The slightest shift in emotion changes the room. You start to notice how thoughts shape outcomes, how coincidence is a code, how reality listens to what you transmit. And that realization is both exhilarating and terrifying, because now, there's no one else to blame. The power that moves things has always been moving through you. Imagine a thin membrane between two worlds, one where everything happens to you, and one where everything happens through you. The difference between them isn't miles. It's a breath. A single inhale that draws you from reaction to creation. When that breath finds rhythm, the border dissolves. You stop trying to control and start remembering. You see patterns where there used to be noise, meaning where there used to be chaos. That's the quantum shift, not a miracle from the outside, but a reorganization of the inside. The question is, will you pause long enough to feel it? Most won't. They'll rush back into the noise, convincing themselves it was nothing. But you're still here, suspended in this fraction of awareness, heart steady, breath slow, sensing that something invisible just said your name. The shift doesn't need your permission. It's already begun. The only choice left is whether you'll keep pretending it's random, or finally remember that you were designed to notice. The first time you feel the shift, it doesn't arrive as light. It arrives as disturbance, a soft, almost imperceptible dissonance in the rhythm of ordinary life. You notice it in the pauses between thoughts, in the way familiar things suddenly feel unfamiliar. It's subtle but magnetic, like a string being pulled from somewhere deep inside the fabric of your day. You can't point to where it started, but you know it's there. The universe doesn't always call with clarity. Sometimes, it whispers in distortion. You try to rationalize it. You tell yourself it's fatigue, coincidence, imagination. But somewhere inside, another voice disagrees. Calm, certain, older than thought. That voice doesn't argue, it observes. It watches you trying to explain what cannot be explained, and it waits. Because it knows that this isn't about logic, it's about remembrance. Every human being feels this call at least once, the sensation that reality is responding to something unspoken inside them. Some ignore it. Some follow. That single choice separates the asleep from the awake. There's a reason this message found you now. Something in you synchronized with it. Maybe a question you've been carrying, a silence you've been postponing. Whatever it is, it aligned. And that alignment is not accidental. You're inside a feedback loop between consciousness and creation. Every thought you have sends a ripple through the field, and the field answers back through symbols, timing, and intuition. When you begin to notice those echoes, life starts speaking a new language, one that has been trying to reach you all along. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that reflects not your face, but your vibration. Each exhale paints a pattern across it. When you're anxious, it blurs. When you're calm, it sharpens. The image isn't fixed. It's a live conversation between you and existence. That's why presence matters. Every breath is a line of code rewriting your connection to the world. Most people think they're waiting for a sign, not realizing they're the signal itself. And maybe that's why so many choose to stay close when they find this space, because something in them recognizes truth not as a concept, but as a frequency. They stay to remember, to tune back into what always felt just out of reach. You might be feeling that now, the quiet realization that something sacred is taking shape inside you. Don't rush it. Let it hum beneath your ribs. The shift doesn't ask for effort, it asks for attention. And somewhere in that attention, a new pattern is already beginning to unfold. At first, the shift feels gentle, like standing in shallow water. But soon you realize that the tide is rising. It doesn't come with noise or chaos. It comes with a silence so deep it starts rearranging you from the inside. You notice things you never paid attention to before. The space between heartbeats, the vibration that follows a thought, the way light bends when you breathe differently. It's beautiful, but it's not easy. Because once awareness enters, it begins to expose everything that doesn't belong. That's where the tension begins. Part of you wants to step forward, to trust this pull towards something larger. Another part clings to the known, terrified of losing control. The mind wants to label it transformation, awakening, coincidence, anything to make it safe again. But the truth is, you can't control something that's already moving through you. You can only decide whether to resist or to participate. The resistance hurts more. It squeezes, contracts, builds pressure. The participation dissolves you, and that's even scarier, because it feels like vanishing. You start to see how the outer world mirrors this inner split. People sound different. Places feel hollow or charged. Some conversations exhaust you. Others seem to open entire rooms inside your chest. You realize you're no longer living in a fixed world, but in a living mirror, one that shifts according to your own vibration. And that understanding changes everything, because it means responsibility. Every thought becomes a thread. Every emotion, a color. Every word, a wave that echoes somewhere beyond what you can see. Still, the fear doesn't vanish. There are nights when you wake up in that liminal state between dream and waking, and for a moment, nothing feels real. The ceiling, your hands, the ticking clock, all seem fragile, like scenery painted over something far more infinite. That's when the shadow of doubt returns, whispering that maybe you imagined it all. But the body remembers differently. The pulse deepens. The breath slows. Even in fear, there's coherence trying to form, quietly, beneath the noise. It's in those moments that the shift proves it's not an idea but a presence. A field that bends closer every time you pay attention. The paradox is that the closer it comes, the more it asks of you. Not faith, not effort, but surrender. And surrender, though soft in word, feels like death in practice. A death of habit, of separation, of pretending you don't already belong to what's calling you. You can sense it now, can't you? That faint hum returning, steady, patient, almost kind. It's as if something enormous is waiting just beyond the edge of perception, breathing with you, learning your rhythm before it finally speaks. There's a point where resistance begins to soften. It doesn't happen in a grand moment of revelation, but in something small, like realizing that the air feels warmer when you stop holding your breath. The tension that once filled your chest starts to dissolve, and for the first time, you catch yourself smiling without reason. It's fragile, almost hesitant, as if your body is testing what it feels like to exist without defense. That's how most transformations begin, not with thunder, but with exhale. You start noticing beauty where your fear used to live. The morning light resting on your skin, the quiet rhythm of someone breathing beside you, the pulse of rain against the window. Things you used to overlook now feel like secret messages, reminders that the universe has been speaking this entire time. You were just listening to the wrong frequency. You realize that the shift isn't about escaping your humanity, it's about inhabiting it fully, without apology. And yet, the paradox remains. The more you open, the more vulnerable you become. Awareness sharpens both wonder and ache. Every sensation deepens, joy burns brighter, but so does longing. You begin to see how the two are bound together, like threads in the same fabric. Without one, the other has no meaning. Light exists because darkness framed it first. That understanding doesn't remove the pain, but it gives it shape, purpose, texture. There's something sacred about that duality, about holding both the wound and the wisdom at once. It's what makes this path so human. And perhaps it's why, in moments like this, people feel the quiet urge to leave a mark, to send a signal back to the field, to whisper through a small gesture that the message landed somewhere real. Sometimes that gesture is as simple as pressing a heart on a screen, not out of habit, but out of resonance. As if saying, "Yes, I felt this too." The more you let this awareness move through you, the more the world begins to respond differently. Doors open in strange synchrony, strangers speak words that mirror your thoughts, timing starts to bend in your favor. It's not luck, it's coherence. The field around you reshaping itself to match the rhythm you've reclaimed. You become both participant and witness, dancing with a force that knows you better than you ever dared to know yourself. But this is only the surface of what's unfolding. Because once the world starts to mirror you, another question begins to rise, slow and quiet, from somewhere deeper. What happens when the mirror shows not just reflection, but origin? When you realize the light bouncing back was never separate to begin with? Something is about to reveal that answer, and it's closer than you think. When the mirror starts to show more than reflection, something shifts again, quietly but profoundly. You realize the light you've been chasing has always been leaking through your own cracks. What you once called coincidence now feels like choreography. Every missed turn, every delay, every heartbreak seems to have been gently folding you toward this moment of recognition. It's disorienting, almost unfair, how much beauty hides inside what once felt like loss. You begin to see that the universe doesn't speak in words, it speaks in arrangement. The way someone calls you just as you think of them. The way the sky shifts color when your thoughts soften. The way time stretches or collapses depending on the quality of your attention. At first, it feels like magic. Later, it feels like memory, as though you're remembering a language you once spoke fluently before forgetting it. That realization changes the way you move. You stop chasing signs and start listening for rhythm. You stop demanding proof and start noticing alignment. Still, there's a part of you that hesitates. Awareness has a cost. Once you see how connected everything is, you can no longer hide behind coincidence or control. The comfort of randomness fades, replaced by responsibility. Every thought becomes alive, carrying weight, carrying consequence. You start to understand why so many choose to stay asleep, because awakening means accountability. To feel the link between your inner weather and the world's response is to carry both the gift and the burden of creation. There are nights when that knowledge feels heavy, when silence becomes too loud, and you wish you could unsee what you now know. But then there are mornings that arrive differently, softer, deliberate, almost sacred. The air feels intelligent. The world greets you, not as something to conquer, but as something that already knows your name. And in that quiet exchange, there's peace. Not the peace of stillness, but of recognition. You belong to something vast, and it's been waiting for you to notice. The contrast deepens. Hope and fear begin to blur, revealing that they're made of the same fabric. Fear is just hope wearing armor. Loss is just space being made for something new. Silence, when you stop resisting it, becomes language. And revelation, when it finally comes, never shouts, it simply opens its eyes and looks back at you. Somewhere inside that gaze, a new pattern begins to emerge. Not brighter, not louder, just closer. It hums beneath the surface, patient and inevitable, as if preparing to show you not the world you knew, but the one that's been quietly watching you all along. You begin to realize that the shift is not a single moment, but a rhythm that keeps returning, a pulse that rises and falls like the tide inside your own chest. Each time it returns, it demands something deeper. The first time, it asked for awareness. The next, it asks for honesty. And then, it asks for surrender. You start to see that awakening isn't about becoming untouchable. It's about becoming transparent enough for truth to move through you. The more light enters, the more shadow it reveals. The process hurts and heals at the same time. There are days when clarity feels like a gift. The world looks alive, responsive, almost kind. You walk down the street and sense an invisible current guiding every encounter. Strangers smile as if they recognize you. Time feels elastic, slower, richer, more deliberate. But then, without warning, the fog returns. The same world grows cold and opaque. The same faces seem distant. You begin to wonder if you lost the connection, if the shift was just an illusion. That's when the fear creeps back in, quiet, measured, familiar. You learn that the shift doesn't vanish, it tests you. It hides to see if you've learned to remember without proof. It retreats so that your attention becomes the bridge back to it. That's the hidden lesson. The field responds not to perfection, but to persistence. It doesn't need you to be constant, only to be present. like breathing, in, out, forgetting, returning. That's how creation happens, through imperfection that keeps showing up. It's strange how this awareness begins to reshape even the simplest things. You eat differently. You listen differently. You speak less, but every word carries more weight. You start to hear silence as part of the conversation, and realize that not everything sacred arrives dressed as light. Sometimes the divine wears ordinary faces, or disguises itself as delay, or hides in the ache of waiting. The universe, it seems, prefers whispers to commands. The duality sharpens. The closer you move toward coherence, the more chaos seems to surround you. It's as if the world resists before it yields, testing whether your stillness can withstand the noise. But you start to sense that even the chaos is part of the orchestration, that the storm doesn't come to break the rhythm, but to prove that it's real. You stand at this strange intersection of knowing and unknowing, watching both light and shadow breathe together, and something inside you understands. The shift was never about escaping contrast, but about holding it until it transforms. And somewhere in that delicate balance, suspended between inhale and exhale, the next revelation gathers itself, waiting for the exact moment you're ready to hear it. Every action you take now seems to echo louder than before. It's as if the air itself has become responsive, recording every thought, every hesitation, every act of courage. You begin to notice a strange symmetry forming around you, the way opportunities appear the moment you stop forcing them, the way people enter your life carrying answers to questions you hadn't yet spoken aloud. It feels like the fabric of reality has shifted from resistance to collaboration, but it's fragile, easily disturbed by doubt. One stray fear, one moment of contraction, and the field tightens again, mirroring your retreat. The lesson becomes unmistakable. Alignment is not about control, but about rhythm. There's a new awareness in everything you do. Each breath feels like a transaction between you and existence. Inhale, receive, exhale, offer. The simplest actions start to carry weight. Sending a message, making a decision, saying no, saying yes. You begin to feel how each choice ripples beyond the visible, shaping outcomes before they arrive. The contrast between effort and flow becomes clear. When you act from fear, things crumble. When you act from coherence, life bends to meet you halfway. The difference isn't in the action itself, but in the energy behind it. And yet, growth doesn't come without friction. There are still moments when nothing seems to respond, when silence replaces synchronicity, when the path ahead feels blank. That's when impatience tries to reclaim you, the need for proof, for progress, for validation. But underneath that discomfort, something subtler is happening. Reality is testing your capacity to stay aligned without evidence. It's the invisible curriculum of creation. You're being taught how to move without guarantees, how to hold frequency when logic offers no reward. The more you accept this dance, the more the results begin to change shape. Success stops looking like arrival and starts feeling like expansion. Instead of chasing outcomes, you notice how awareness itself multiplies. Sharper intuition, deeper calm, a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on circumstance. Even others begin to feel it. They sense it in your tone, your timing, your presence. Conversations unfold differently. Projects that once drained you now feel alive again, carrying a pulse that wasn't there before. It's in these moments that people often feel compelled to respond, not out of obligation, but out of recognition. To put words to what they're sensing. To trace the same frequency and see where it leads. Sometimes, reflection itself becomes an offering. A way of saying, I see this too. I feel the pattern. And maybe that's the hidden purpose of the shift all along. Not to isolate you in understanding, but to awaken a shared remembrance. Still, this new clarity doesn't signal an ending. It's a doorway into a subtler dimension of cause and effect, where your smallest choices begin to rewrite the story beneath the visible world. And just beyond that threshold, something even larger waits. Patient, deliberate, preparing to show what happens when coherence stops being a practice and becomes your nature. As coherence becomes less of a practice and more of your nature, the world begins to rearrange itself around you in ways too intricate to call coincidence. The line between inner and outer starts to blur. You think of someone and they appear. You pause before making a choice and circumstances bend to fill the silence. It's subtle, almost invisible, yet undeniable. The rhythm you once had to search for now lives beneath everything, even in stillness. But with this awareness comes a new kind of responsibility. What was once random now responds. And when everything responds, nothing can be taken lightly. You begin to sense that reality has texture, smooth in moments of trust, jagged when you tighten against it. It's not that obstacles disappear, they transform. What used to block you now seems to sculpt you, shaping edges you didn't know were needed. Growth starts to feel less like ascent and more like refinement, the art of remembering your true outline by brushing away what was never you. Each challenge, each delay, each sudden loss becomes part of the same sculptor's hand. The pressure doesn't punish, it reveals. And yet, there's still an ache that lingers, the quiet nostalgia for the version of you who didn't yet know. That innocence, that simplicity of living without awareness. There are moments when you'd give anything to go back, to not feel everything so deeply, to not sense the undercurrents beneath every interaction. But once perception expands, contraction becomes impossible. You can close your eyes, but you can't unsee the light. Awareness, once tasted, marks you forever. The paradox deepens. The more you align, the lonelier it sometimes feels. The higher your frequency, the quieter the noise around you becomes. Conversations lose their comfort, small talk feels like static, and solitude, once a symptom, becomes sanctuary. But solitude has its own mirror, showing you the parts that still crave approval, still long for witness. That's when you realize the next layer of the shift isn't about energy or manifestation, it's about intimacy. How deeply can you stay connected, even when no one else seems to speak your language? In that question lies the next frontier. Because the quantum field doesn't just mirror coherence, it mirrors connection. The more authentically you engage with the world, the more precisely it echoes you back. It's not about perfection anymore, it's about transparency. Being real enough for the field to recognize its reflection in you. And so, the shift evolves again. The air grows denser, the silence more articulate. Every heartbeat seems to hum in harmony with something unseen, as if existence itself were breathing with you. Still, just beyond that quiet pulse, something vast stirs, a presence gathering weight, preparing to show you that even this level of awareness was only the threshold, not the arrival. You start to feel it before you can name it, a subtle expansion pressing against the edges of what you thought you knew. The world around you doesn't change shape, but its meaning does. Ordinary sounds seem to vibrate with hidden intent. Light falls differently, as if it's aware of being seen. Even your own thoughts echo longer, like voices carried across a canyon. The boundary between you and everything else thins, and for a moment, it's hard to tell where perception ends and creation begins. It's not overwhelming, it's intimate, like the universe leaning closer to whisper something only you can understand. But that intimacy carries its own shadow. The closer you move toward clarity, the more it tests you. You begin to notice that light can be blinding if you stare too long. Truth has texture, and not all of it is soft. It scrapes away illusions that once kept you safe, exposing the rawness underneath. You realize that awakening doesn't protect you from pain, it refines it. The ache becomes sharper, more articulate, as if every emotion now speaks in full sentences. There are moments you crave the comfort of ignorance again, but the door back is gone. The only direction left is deeper. Still, something in that depth begins to guide you differently. You stop searching for answers and start listening for alignment. You notice that each doubt, each hesitation, isn't a flaw but a compass, a signal showing where you've been holding back from truth. Even confusion has a rhythm now. It teaches patience. It shapes discernment. The contrast between certainty and surrender becomes the new field of mastery, and within that tension, something luminous begins to form. Imagine walking through a corridor made of light and shadow intertwined. Every step illuminates one wall and darkens the other. You can't see the full path, only the stretch in front of you, glowing faintly under your feet. Behind you, darkness reclaims what's already been learned. Ahead, the unknown flickers like a heartbeat. You move slowly, not out of fear, but reverence, because you understand now that revelation isn't about reaching the end, but about becoming worthy of the next layer of seeing. Sometimes, the contrast grows so intense that it feels like a storm forming behind your ribs. The wind of change pulls at everything not anchored in truth. Relationships shift, priorities dissolve, plans lose meaning. Yet beneath that dismantling, a quiet certainty hums, the sense that nothing real can be taken. The more the outer world rearranges, the more you recognize that the true architecture was never outside. And there, in that realization, the air thickens again. The pulse you first felt returns, slower, heavier, deliberate. The field waits, as if holding its breath. You can sense that what comes next won't be subtle. It's gathering momentum, preparing to step fully into view, and somewhere inside you, a single thought flickers. Am I ready to see what's been seeing me all along? And then it happens, not as explosion, but as recognition. The presence that had been circling the edges of your perception finally steps into form, not outside you, but within you. It doesn't announce itself with light or sound. It arrives as a stillness so complete it feels like the world has paused to listen. In that stillness, everything rearranges. The questions you carried lose their urgency. The ache that once defined you softens into understanding. You realize that the shift was never coming from above or beyond. It was unfolding from the center outward, using your breath as its bridge. You look around and notice how familiar everything feels, yet entirely new. The room hasn't changed, but the space inside it has widened. Even silence feels populated, as if the air remembers every thought that's ever passed through it. You can sense the pulse of the world syncing with your own, a rhythm older than memory, steady and vast. It hums through the floor, through your skin, through the unseen web that connects all things. For a moment, there's no separation at all. The self you've been defending dissolves into the same current that moves oceans and stars. You aren't just witnessing reality, you are participating in its design. That realization doesn't bring euphoria, it brings reverence. You see how fragile and miraculous it is to be here, breathing, perceiving, shaping with intention instead of habit. Every heartbeat feels like a vow to stay awake. Every breath, a choice to remain in conversation with existence. The shift has turned into awareness, and awareness has turned into responsibility. The kind that doesn't weigh you down, but anchors you deeper into meaning. From this place, gratitude emerges naturally. It's quieter than joy, but it burns longer. It moves through you like light through glass, touching everything you once overlooked. And it's usually here, in this soft aftermath, that people feel the impulse to respond, to leave a trace of recognition, a small gesture that says, "I was here, I felt this, I remember now." That gesture, whether a comment or a simple tap of resonance, becomes a continuation of the field, the universe nodding back through you. The journey doesn't end with revelation. It begins with it. Because once you've seen the architecture behind the visible, you can never build unconsciously again. Every word, every silence, every act becomes part of the ongoing creation. The quantum shift was never a single event, it was an invitation. And by crossing this threshold with awareness, you've answered it. So take one last breath, not to release or to gather, but to remember. The field moves when you do. The rhythm waits for your next heartbeat. And somewhere, in the quiet between sound and silence, existence whispers back the only truth it ever wanted you to hear. You are already home.